everybody. Welcome to the Rodeo Wagon podcast, brought to you by Western Edge App and Cosmic Cowboys Productions. We're here with Matt Triplett. Man, actually, nice talking to you again. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's good. Good talking to you, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Excited about it.
I meant to have you at Big Sky. So I had like a list. Like I was gonna do 4 or 5 at Big Sky because there's
Yep.
so much time to do stuff and
Right.
broke my leg the week before. So turns out change of plans.
Yeah. I ended up not going to Big Sky either. So.
Okay. Well, it worked out then, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
I just had to crutch back in because I parked it at the church because it has really good Wi-Fi. Uh,
Yeah.
that is a challenge, is getting back into the van like on
With the
crutches.
broken leg.
It sits high enough, like it's getting up. So like when I go up, if I don't have anybody there helping me, like I got one shot. I gotta push myself up and then I get rid of the crutches. I throw them away and then I grab the seat and I pick them up and
Oh,
getting out's easy. Getting
right.
out of bigger vehicles is easy, but getting into them, that's the cool part. And then carrying coffee in here at the same time,
Right. Yeah. You got to have your coffee on this too.
which is kind of funny because I don't 100% of all the other bull riders are not going to want to do podcast in the morning at all. I prefer it.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I
I I,
function
I
better.
enjoy the morning.
I function better at 5 in the morning than I do at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I don't. That's
It
one
must be it
thing.
must be the age we're at nowadays. No.
Yeah, that's true. I probably didn't always, so that maybe. Yeah, that's 100.
Uh,
What have you been up to?
uh man, really just been with the family and just working, just yeah, trying to get things right, I guess, if you may.
Um, how old is your girl now?
She just turned 2.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's
So
like like right
a
when you
little
have when you have a kid, it just time uh just goes super fast.
bit. Yeah, it does. Yeah, no joke. Are you guys planning on having more you don't know or
Uh yeah,
just
we don't know at the moment, yeah.
for sure? Yeah, man, that's exciting though. It changes everything. Like
Oh,
everything.
it does.
It's like a whole different world.
Definitely.
Responsibility. I think that's another thing is having kids. Then all of a sudden, when I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, it's because I know I have a 2 hour window where I can get stuff done before the kids.
Before they wake up,
Yeah.
right?
Whatever that
So
is, I
true.
know those 2 or 3 hours, like I can get something done.
Yep.
And I like to. I still, if I need to, my mom's a babysitter, and she has 12 grandkids. So,
Yeah. Wow.
right, obviously some of them are in school right now, but so she watches the kids. So sometimes I take them over to her house, and she watches that, and I can get work done, kind of. But outside of that, especially when I'm riding, because we're gone on the weekend, so we're gone 2 to 4 days,
Yeah.
2 or 3 days a week. So being home with them. So a lot of times during the week, I'm actually spending time with them. So
Yeah. We
morning
have
time
it
isn't
really we have
probably a
it
big
really nice.
deal.
We have it really nice too. My mother and father-in-law live just right down the road, and they love watching Evie. So whenever we need a little help, they really help us out.
Yeah, I think my mom enjoys it. When
Oh yeah.
I do watch them throughout the week, and it's just me and them. I think that kind of she, she we can only do that for a couple weeks before she's gonna want them to come over to the house.
Yeah.
And my daughter, so I guess they reached this age where like she wants to stay the night at Grammy's house all the time. So she would rather live with them, I think, than us half the time. But she finally reached that age.
Right. Well, grandma and grandpa's usually let them have more snacks
Phone,
before bed and give
the
them give
phone.
them the give them the reins a little bit more. They give
Yeah.
them the reins a little bit more.
Well, she knows like we try to do our best to not keep her from technology, but keep her from really just getting, that addiction really at that young age where she's just
Yeah.
watching it all the time. So when she goes over to Grammy's, she knows she can get the phone and she can,
She
get
just
on a
gets
little.
always gets her way on. That's how. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Grandma and grandpas like to spoil them for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and there for a minute, because my son, so he's a little bit younger than your daughter. He's one,
Mhm.
but so he just reached that age where he, it's almost like that. There's like I don't know how long it lasts, but there's like this perfect little area in a kid's life between 1 and 2.5 before the toddler, terrors come along, where they're just, it's just perfect. They want to snuggle with you, and all of that. And he's kind of at that stage, but he's a mama's boy. Um, but now he's turned into a papa's boy too. So I've lost my freaking son to my dad. And so we go over to the house and stuff, and he don't want nothing to do with me. He wants Papa because he knows Papa will take him to see the horses and
Yep.
and give him the snacks. He'll walk up to me with like a snack, and then he'll be like halfway there, and I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll open it," and then he'll turn and go to Papa because I think in his mind he's like, "Okay, there's a chance the dad's not going to give this to me.
Right. He's gonna take
No,
it from me.
Papa's going to do it."
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's a interesting thing. What did you plan as far as writing? I know some people, man, I don't remember what it was. I think it was Justin McBride, and this was a long time ago. This was back in like when I first started writing, when I was just immersed in watching, all of that. And I think it was McBride said, "I'm not having kids until I'm done writing bulls because of what I do for a profession and the family life." Did you did you plan that, or was it just kind of life and how life, goes? Was it
Yeah,
pre-planned
it
beforehand?
was just how life went. We, Lord willing, we weren't planning on anything, but if we ended up having a kid, that's what it was
Yeah.
gonna be. And the Lord blessed us with a beautiful little girl. And yeah, I mean that what Justin said there. I mean, I agree with it a little bit. It does for me, anyways. It makes it a little harder to want to leave and go ride. But at the same time, this is a dream and a passion and something I love doing. So you gotta you got to just go on with it. And I think it's a good thing for them to grow up and see the work ethic and what it takes to be at that high level, so they can almost role model after you. And so I do still like want her to see me ride and see what goes on behind the scenes. That way she can carry it over into her life and be successful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one thing that I thought about. That was always my initial reaction to, which again, at the place where probably they're just too extreme. So when I heard that, I'm like, maybe I want to be the opposite. Like I want my kids to grow up and actually see, the struggles and that will to keep going.
Right.
Them to see
Definitely.
that. But at the same time, on more of a centric way of looking at it, it doesn't really matter whether it's bull riding or any other part of the life. They're gonna see that anyway. So
Right.
really, I think I've gone more to, this the same way. Life's gonna go as it goes, and not really making decisions based on that as much.
Yeah.
I could see, getting older. Like I'm not gonna ride bulls when I'm 40 years old.
No, me
Like,
neither.
and that's a different thing. I don't foresee being a 40-year-old bull rider, but there's some out there and freaking they're good. Ed
Oh
Knott,
yeah.
he can't.
Right.
I don't
Came
know.
out of retirement and
He came
still
out of
still
retirement.
kicking butt.
Yeah. So maybe I won't when I'm 40, but when I'm 50, like Ben, Johns, I'll come back.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I hope I get it all out of my system that way when I'm 50. It's not a want anymore.
yeah, the one thing that's weird, and I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, and I think each person's different in like the mindset that place you go into before you get on. And
Hmm.
I feel like when I perform the best, it's a weird spot, and it's not a spot that I necessarily like. That's not a spot that I want. Like if my boy decides to ride and that's what he wants to do, then that's great, and then I'll teach him how to handle that. But it's kind of a dark position to me in that zone that you get in. the one person that I have heard talk about this recently was Nate Diaz.
Hmm.
And he was talking in an interview, and I absolutely, he's like, I love fighting, but I hate the place I go into when I fight. It's a and it's just an interesting thing, and for me, that's like one of those places. It's really a place of, I mean, obviously the sport's so dangerous,
Yeah,
so like you have to go into a place, and I think maybe even more when you have a family, because you have all of that, those are distractions at that point when you're writing. So you have to
definitely.
go to a place of complete, commitment, and there's nothing there. It's you're cutting the brake line and you have to be all in. And
Oh yeah, 100%.
that's an interesting place. I don't know that a lot of people realize. It's high level too. It doesn't happen as much on lower level stuff. I feel like when you're getting on really good bulls in really high pressured situations, I feel like it's more, maybe it forces you to kind of get that tunnel vision. What's been
Yeah,
your
I would.
with some of that?
Ah, yeah, I think like right. It's just like you said, cutting the brakes, getting into warrior mode, and you got to just let go of everything and get in the zone. And some you can't let any distraction get in your way. That's the biggest thing is you just got to go straight for it. And little teeny distractions like maybe thinking about what's going on at home or thinking about the kid or just anything, it can distract your performance. So it's got to be just straightforward and get into warrior mode and no turning back, no thinking about anything. And when you're in that zone, you really are just reacting and letting your body take over of what you prepared yourself for all week. And sometimes that definitely can get hard when your kid may be sick and you're on the road and you're thinking about that, or just little things may pop up that get into your mind. But when you're getting ready to strap cattle, you can't be that. Nothing can be. It's a very selfish game, if you may, but it's very dangerous, like you said. So when you're getting ready to strap, it's got to be clear minded and no other distractions, and you just got to get in that zone. And it can be scary to be in that position. You just got to just go with it, and that's when you're riding at the top of your level. It's no thinking. It's just reacting.
Yeah, and so much of it changes as well. Obviously there's going to be times where you're in that flow, and so it's much easier to get into that zone
Right.
because of
Definitely.
that feels there. It's so much of it's like playing golf. If you're playing golf, for any golfers that are listening, but if you're playing golf, you get in that rhythm. It's easy to, remake those shots. Uh,
Right.
when you're doing that. The second you get off, then it can kind of get difficult.
Right.
Throughout,
I think it's that mental aspect because you start overthinking things. You start letting your brain, tell you this and that. And when you overthink things or you're thinking about it too much, that's what you did all week to prepare for the situation that might get thrown at you. You don't have time to think. It's all just fast paced reactions.
what
And our brain is when a guy can control the brain and the mental side of it, that's when I think you're at the top of the peak and you're riding at the best of your level. But when you let your mind start working and thinking, and it makes it harder. It makes our life a lot harder when we let our brain think.
I think one of the big transitions for me that's kind of helped with that on that point is going from like earlier on in my career, listening to a lot of just motivational speakers and motivational stuff that seemed to be super shallow. Like it was all
Mm,
based on almost emotion, even if the speaker themselves was not necessarily, maintaining that, it still comes across that way and it's transferred that way.
yep.
Instead of getting more into like sports psychology. So then I started going from, okay, instead of listening to motivational speakers, I need to start listening and reading some sports psychologists who, their profession is, helping professional
Right.
athletes be
Yeah.
able to succeed under this pressure. That helped a lot. Um,
Yeah, definitely. That does help. Listening to stuff like that really helps. Just if you're going, let's just say a guy's going through a slump and he's overthinking, but if you really listen to some of that stuff, it's got really good advice to help you get out of it. Bull riding to me has been, it. Yeah, you got to work your butt off, you got to work out, but but the mental side of it is I mean, that's the hardest part,
I think
dealing with it all.
one guy said potential minus distractions equals performance.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like,
Definitely.
how do we minimize all those distractions? Uh, and that can be easier said than done. And the crazy part is those distractions there's billions of them,
Oh yeah.
billions of different distractions from like in the shoot stuff, like the feel of nodding your head, you know, and like what's that spot where it feels right where you nod your head, and that's everybody's different. Obviously, JB sliding on the flank,
Yep.
and you have Silvano who's getting locked in, like
Yep.
everything's right, unless
Right.
it can't
Right.
be if he's on the clock. One of the two, but still,
Definitely.
two different ways of doing that, and even that's a distraction at times. I've found uh, learning that, one of the big things for me, which I really changed into my hand a lot, because, I started from a blank sheet learning Gary LeFew, driving to the
Hmm.
front end. I think it was a great that I needed that. The problem is because uh, I was brand new, I went to one extreme and never learned the other side. So I never really learned to like lift on my bull rope.
Yep.
It got me really far away from my hand, but into my hand, just
No, yeah.
figure it out. My hips would come out is just because what was happening was when I left the chute, I was leaving so far over when they dropped, there was nothing
Yep.
to pull my hips
Well,
underneath the rope. And
yep.
my hips were coming out. And literally it was just, been doing this for 10 years. And it was literally earlier this year when one of the Brazilians came up to me and he was talking to me about into my hand. And he said, don't change anything other than leaving the chute. Pick up on your bull rope and drive. When you leave, drive just like you're driving, but just make sure that you can feel that you're holding on to that bull rope when you leave. And he was just
Yeah.
like, flip
Boom.
his, all of a sudden. I was like, man, this is easy. Now I know why people love bulls into their hand. Then I was trying to kick everything I got on for the
Yeah.
last part of that season. Probably 80% of the bulls that went into my hand, I was spraying.
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
But little things like that. But one thing I noticed was when I was locked in like that, I could nod my head and then bulls be out of shape in there. Whereas before, when I was leaving, I felt like I didn't want to get beat so bad that I couldn't nod my head if they were leaned up against me, or, I had to get them sitting up. So even that I noticed, hindsight, like just as a process of like, man, that was a distraction where I was trying to get things perfect. And,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, it's almost like you mentally get a distraction already by trying to get it perfect when really in reality it doesn't need to be when everyone's at their peak level. It's just get your hand in your rope tie in and get up there and nod your head and go. But we get to thinking, oh, I didn't use my feet last time or I didn't bow my chest out. So we try to get that perfect position and we're thinking about it. And then when we nod our head, we're already behind because we're thinking about our feet when that's not what you need to be thinking about. That's what you prepare the whole week for. And when you just when you just get up there and nod your head and not think, it's a game changer. But to get into that mental stage is harder when you're thinking about what you did wrong. It's almost like Douglas told me this when I was going through some struggles with writing or just if I bucked off. He goes, man, once you get into the because I used to get pretty down on myself or mad, if you may. And he said, once you get back in the locker room and you take your stuff off, you need to just let it go, forget about it. There's always going to be tomorrow or the next weekend to get on one. And that played a huge part in making me start riding a lot better because if you carry on and start thinking about all the things you've done wrong, it just doesn't work. Yeah, you're supposed to. Yeah, it's good to look at. Hey, I did this wrong, and I can critique it during the week. But well, if you just overly think about it, then in your mind you form a habit of all the things you're doing wrong with your feet, or if you don't, get out over the front end, and then you're mentally putting that in your head that that's what you're doing, even though it's wrong. So I think it's just got to be the positive person of thinking of things that you're going to do right, and then just leave it at that, and not worry about what you may have done wrong the last time.
Yeah, I think one thing too, and I've really been working on this as well, and it's really helped my performance and consistency. and you can talk to Dakota Keith and they'll testify to it. One of the big things is like going from that. So after you buck off, and after don't get, don't win, you don't ride your bull. There's emotions that come from that. There's so much adrenaline and stuff like that. It can, that emotion that you're feeling, that's anger or whatever. If I can take that, and I know, mentally that I can take that, and instead of using that energy to into my past ride that I just got off of, if I take that energy and immediately start putting it onto the next one,
Yep.
and then it actually drives me. And now, instead of, so you get adrenaline let down. This is uh, physiological, right? So adrenaline let down, where we hit such a high on the weekends that we crash. So the
Yep.
day after, we're at a super low, our adrenal glands are just freaking gone. So, but being able to, especially if we're completely focused on our failure, it seems to be worse then, because then that letdown happens, and then it's harder to refocus in on the next weekend and get that back up. And when I transition that into the future tense and I start using that same energy, it's the same anger, whatever you want to call it, the same emotion,
Mhm.
into that
Yep.
next bull ride, I feel like I'm able to bounce back during the week a little bit faster, because I think that crash doesn't happen quite as bad.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then you're more
Definitely.
consistent because you're able to take that. But again, that's easier said than done, because there's still times like certain pressure situations
Right.
that's more difficult. One saying that Cowboy Cerrone, is that how you pronounce
Trony. Yep.
it?
Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah, Cowboy. So I was listening to him the other day, and he was talking about like the transition in his career, where all of a sudden when he got to the UFC and stuff, like that pressure and all of that like was so much more. Like all of a sudden before he didn't care. It was just
Yep.
like, nothing mattered. It was just I'm fighting, whatever. I think that's an interesting thing, because I think it happened the same thing in bull riding. Like I can remember back when I first started and you're just rodeoing and really nothing mattered. You didn't care about much, but then just a stage. Did you
Right.
how have you experienced that? Because you kind of went through all of that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think when I very first came on, and man, it was a long time ago. I think 2012 was the first year I came on, and that's definitely something that when you get to the big show, it dang sure is an eye opener. You hang your rope up to some of the guys you've looked up to, and it dang sure plays a hard role in your mind. But then again, you just gotta show up and not be thinking about that, let it go and ride. My first one, I might have let slip a little bit. I got on Ringo my very first event, and it is like seven something. But uh, the next one I rode. But yeah, sometimes you do get caught up in the big lights, the guys that are there for your very first time. But it's it's all just the same thing when you go to the small ones to the big ones. If you can keep that same composure and not let all of the drama or lights or all the stuff that goes with the big show get to you.
Yeah, that was like oh, he just Brazilian, and really really good Brazilian. He's over in Brazil and he moved back to Brazil, but really talented Brazilian. And it was interesting that like when he would get on tour and stuff, for him it wasn't even so much the bulls or anything. It was the other riders that he was around that actually that was the biggest obstacle for him, was performing with those peers that he looked up to and stuff, not so much even the stock that he was getting on. And
Yeah.
that's another interesting thing that maybe is good for kids coming up, maybe to prepare upon. Like that probably is maybe one of the biggest struggles when you first come up. Like it's not even the stock so much. So like that's a
Yeah.
distraction. And if you know that the distraction going in, then you probably can be a little bit more prepared for it. Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about my favorite cowboy hat brand, Sombrero Brands. As a professional bull rider, I know how important it is to have a hat that not only looks good, but can withstand the toughest rides out there. And that's exactly what Sombrero Brands delivers. Their hats are custom fitted and shaped to perfection, with a level of attention to detail that's hard to find these days. But what really sets Sombrero Brands apart is the fact that they're a family-owned and operated business. Mark and Kendall Holler, the owners, and their daughter Sarah, who's only 13 but already a hat-making prodigy, are all passionate about their craft. They know what it takes to make a cowboy hat that can stand up to anything the rodeo circuit can throw at it. And get this, the founder's grandfather, Polly Holler, was born and raised at South Camp on the Four Sixes Ranch. These folks have got cowboy blood running through their veins, and it shows in every hat they make. That's why I'm proud to have Sombrero Brands as a major sponsor for my podcast, the Rodeo Wagon Podcast. So if you're in the market for a hat that's tough enough to handle anything the rodeo throws at it, give Sombrero Brands a try. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. So some guys, it probably not too. It probably depends on where you're from. I mean, heck, you have guys coming up that, I mean, that locker room's no different than what they're used to already.
Right.
They're already around, the triplets, and they're around all of the group of guys. They just, now making that transition. Whereas some guys, it's not. Like for me, it was a big deal because I wasn't even around rodeo. I didn't know anything about rodeo.
Yeah.
To the whole rodeo world. So when I started, it was just watching TV. So 2012, that was like the first time I got on bulls, and I remember watching you on tour, and did Silvana win? I think Silvana won 2012. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yep. I think it was Silvana.
Yeah, because 13, I think.
11 and 12, he went back to back, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And 13 and 15, JB won it.
Yep.
Yeah. So like that was I really remember, that and watching. So then for me, I didn't spend much time going to amateur deals. It was 2 years. It was 3 years, and got on the tour for the first time. And that was a big deal for me because I was still so fresh, but there's no real coaching or mental coaching. I think that's one thing that, man, there needs to be more of, and there's just not a whole lot unless you're in little niches, is
right.
People that have gone through it, that have the experience and are willing to help.
Definitely. And I was fortunate enough, growing up there in Montana, Bo Hill lived 5 minutes from where I grew up. So as soon as I turned 18, I got to start traveling with Bo Hill. And that was huge for me because, yeah, I watched Bo Hill, and I thought it was the coolest thing when he asked me to go because I got to watch him on TV. He lived 5 minutes down the road, and he showed me the ropes right off the bat. And like you said, that's huge. That's huge to be able to go to your very first event with someone you've looked up to and someone that's your buddy, and that kind of breaks the ice, if you may. It makes you feel pretty good. It makes you. I know I buffed my chest out. I'm like, yeah, I'm with Bo Hill. Let's go. So I mean, yeah, that is a huge deal if that happens. Definitely.
Yeah, I could imagine, because even like when I started going, and when I first was going to Torn Pro, I was just going by myself. So I was completely foreign. I didn't really know. A lot of my buddies that I would have known went PRTA route. Guys like Dan Fugate. Mason did, but at that time I was so fresh. I was still so new that Mason was still one of the people. At that time he wasn't in the PBR like that. But locally in Missouri, Mason was dominating, he was, so I really got to know Mason really well. It was probably 2 or 3 years. But then again, that's also, I think, part of going through that process of going to these, small associations and actually staying in them, whereas I didn't. Like I didn't spend enough time in any one association. It was one. I didn't go back to another finals outside of any PBR stuff until like last year, when I realized when I come back from injury that it'd be good to go get on some.
Right.
Those finals were in like December, and at that time there's nothing to go to. So I'm like, I need to start buying my card because there's money to be won.
Yeah.
But for kids coming up, actually being able to go through that process and that process and that development, that's another thing too. So my agent Vinny, he was talking to me because he comes from baseball,
Yeah.
And baseball it's a development sport, and it makes sense. So guys in baseball, if you're 22 and you get into the MLB, you're stupid young. There's not very many of them out there. Most guys are 24, 26 years old when
Mhm.
that's their rookie year, you know, and they spent, 4, 6 years in the minor league system on skill development. And
Right.
uh, I think bull riding, uh, I think that's going to become necessary, especially with the caliber of bulls coming up, and like pulling a lot of these young guys in too early. I think is a detriment to maybe where they could peak out. Especially with, you get on those bulls at that level, and you're not quite ready for it, like the injuries. That's
Right.
that can
And
be
that
interesting.
that's a huge deal too, because there's probably been so many bull riders that maybe didn't get the help they needed right away, and maybe got hurt to where they couldn't really have a career because they didn't have the training, if you may, to get them prepared for that caliber, that level. And that is something I agree with you on. It would be nice to have like a mentor being younger, before you get here, just to kind of show you the ropes, just to kind of get you mentally, physically, just kind of prepared for the big show. Because yeah, it I know there's been kids that have been very good that have gotten hurt at a too young of a stage, and they don't get to carry on with their career, and it's just kind of it's a sad thing to see, because this sport already is kind of dying down. Because I mean, and a lot of parents ain't letting kids ride bulls this day and age. They're seeing what it does, and
Yeah.
and I think if they seen, if they had a route to where they could actually get some coaching, some mentorship, before they got to that level, I think it would help tremendously.
Yeah, and I think we're at a weird spot too on that front where uh the bucking bull industry and the rider development industry really are kind of in a weird spot, and it needs to really be addressed, and it needs to be addressed quickly, because you are seeing some of these mini bucking bulls. I don't care how good you are. You have no business getting on a animal that bucks that hard at 15 years old,
Right.
14 years old. Like that is at a detriment. Whereas, uh, some of these kids are so little and they're getting on bucking bulls and they go 90, and it's a legit 90 for size comparison. Like,
Right.
when they're 20 and they get on that bull, if that bull's going to be bigger, but they're going to be bigger, type of a deal. So, that kind of transitionary place from transitioning from steers to, when you turn 18 and you're getting on bulls, that's kind of an area that I think really needs to be addressed.
Yeah. See, it was different when I started growing up, or when I went into it. I went from steers. There was no mini bulls, so it was steers,
Yeah,
junior bulls.
junior bull.
and and I think that needs to come back, because the mini bulls, just I'm not a big fan of mini bulls whatsoever. They're just, I just don't like the way they buck. I don't think it's very smart. But hey, that's just me. I think junior bulls way better. Because you see these 16, 17-year-old kids still getting on mini bulls, and it's like, I mean, there's got to be a stage where it's either, you got to mentally get tough too, and you got to get on big bulls as well. You can't be, in high school getting on mini bulls. I don't think that's right at all either. When I was in high school, I was already getting on big bulls.
Right.
They're that kind of, and they don't have to be the rank. They weren't the rankest ones, right? They were bulls though. But that mentally prepares you for the next step. But when you get on mini bulls until you're a junior in high school, that's not going to get you to the career that you want to be at. Like, there needs to be, uh I think junior bulls is the best thing. It
Yeah.
just, and they don't have to be the rankest ones. They can be jumping kickers, but that mentally gets you prepared for the real deal.
I think size too. So I think that some of it is, okay, well, this bull bucks really hard and he's small, so a guy's gonna want to get on him. But I think size is a big deal, like, and that's a mental thing. So I think
Right.
our kids do need to make that mental switch to, a bigger bull. I was talking to Kurt Check when we were over in Saudi Arabia, and he was talking about, like, because he does a lot for the kids and stuff like that, and he was talking about, you wouldn't believe how much size matters. A
Right.
lot of these kids would rather get on a wild little freaking calf, you know, versus a bigger bull that stands
Right.
good and doesn't buck very hard.
And
Um,
that's great. And that's the mental step that almost will break kids, because then they'll have to transition to where they are getting on bigger bulls, and then they get on this, they draw this big bull that, yeah, it might not buck that hard, but he's so big, but he's mentally already beat because he's so used to just getting on the little mini bulls.
yeah,
And that just, I don't think that helps your game whatsoever.
yeah. And man, another thing too, though, is when, going that route is like the profitability of having these associations and stuff it's not there. So I think, the buck and bull industry lately it's transformed because now there's money to be made and you can actually make a little bit of money, with these bull
Right.
teams and with and keeping, you know, more head of freaking bulls is not the answer.
Right.
You're not getting you're getting paid to win and you can keep, 10 bulls instead of freaking 30, especially these bulls that are weaker that would be good for practice. Like there's no profit in having
That
this.
is true.
I think that's a big detriment to where we're at too on that. And I know there's not a lot of places to go. Like I in the last 6 months I've had probably in the last year, I've had over, probably a dozen, close to 20 people ask me, "Hey, is there any practice pens around here?" Because I moved back closer to Springfield. And I'm like, when I first started, there was, you could
Yeah.
was there's 4 practice pens within 2.5 hours. And now I'm like, there's only one practice pen that I would recommend somebody going to that's just beginning within
Hmm.
2.5 hours of my house.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too, with like you said, with how much money you can make, and it's hard to feed a bull that don't buck as hard. But I think a lot of guys too, they quit doing a lot of practices because then you just get guys coming out there and not trying, or they'd let them get on them kind of weaker bulls and say, hey, I'll let you get on, all the weaker bulls, but I need you to get on just one good one for me. And
Right.
that would be the problem, is these kids would go get on the weaker bulls, but then they just wouldn't even get on the good one. And so guys are like, well, if you can't help me out while I'm helping you out, why am I going to keep these bulls that don't buck as good? And, if you're going to be a bull rider, if you're going to get in this game, you got to get on everything. You can't just get on the easy ones. It's got to be, if you're going to get better and be at the highest level, you got to get on the easy ones to get better, but you got to get on the good ones in practice too to be at that next level. You can't just keep coasting. It's got to be, I got to get better and I got to get on the good ones in practice as well.
And especially for people that are still on that skill development stage.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, definitely.
especially then, because I remember going to Kevin Gross. I remember going to his place when I first moved to Springfield and, going through that phase and him being like, look, if you want to go and ride those ranked bulls, you better get on them because you need to know
Yeah,
what you feel like. And
definitely.
going to his house and getting on bulls. Every single time he would try to sell one of his ranked bulls, I told him, "You call me,
Yeah.
I'll get on him because I need to know what that feels like." You know. So going and getting on those ranked bulls, and David Day was down close to Springfield at that time. It's crazy now. Like when I first started, you weren't getting paid to get on practice bulls. You were paying. I'd pay $30 every Sunday to go get on practice bulls, and nowadays they're paying guys. But David, he'd be like on my rank bulls, if you ride them over 4 seconds, I'll give you $200, and if you ride them for 8 seconds, I'll give you $500. It's just kind of a
Right.
little motivator for guys, and then he would have some that were just but basically same deal. You're required to get on one of his good bulls.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what makes you better. You're only going to be as good as what you practice on. Now I'm not saying, oh, you got to get on a PBR short round bull at a practice spin. No, I'm not saying that. But you can't just keep on getting on the duck little spinners. Yeah, that helps your confidence. But once your confidence is high, you need to get on something that's going to test your ability.
Yeah.
And something that's going to test your ability is going to make you better rider.
Yeah, and I think even some of these are a detriment. Like, if I come the last couple of years, like as rehab assignments, I've been staying close to the house, and like for the first months or so coming back and just getting on bulls, right? Just getting used to the 8 second clock, but even that, like I've started noticing, like I have to be really careful about which one of these are going to, because some of these bulls are so weak that it's not helping me. It almost hurt me. And
Right.
actually, you need to get on something that's gonna.
Oh, yeah, because just like you said, you prefer you on a weaker bull that's just chasing his tail, you're gonna almost have bad habits come up because you can sit on your ass or you don't have to get out over them. You can just almost sit there and just throw your hand over your head. You know, that's not helping you at all. That's actually pushing you backwards. You need
And
to get on something that kicks good, that actually makes you get out over and throw your chest and, do the right, correct moves, not just sit there and hang on.
you're moving. And when you get on those rank bulls, you have to be moving. And some of
Yep.
those big bulls you don't move on, and you shouldn't
No.
move on them. And that's
Right.
that's a huge difference, that I've noticed on that. And also it's a thinking process. Uh, I noticed on really good bulls that I get on, I'm not thinking at all. It's no thought.
Right.
You know? And then
Yes.
on slower bulls, like my mind's engaged. And you still ride bulls where your mind's engaged, but if you're always riding bulls where your mind's engaged like that and you're not used to just that reaction
Yep.
and that feel, that's a big difference there. And it takes a second to kind of learn how to ride those bulls where you're not sinking.
Right.
It takes a lot of, like you were going back to the training and stuff like that. Um, I was when I was at that town band championship, and I went back there, and he's like, man, that's what 500 drills a day does. I'm like, well, I'm not doing it for no reason, because I know that my brain is only going to do what it's been trained to do.
Right.
Because you're not reacting. You get on, anytime, especially getting on bulls where you're probably 88 and over. Outside of maybe a few that spend so much time in the air, where it's just like
Oh yeah,
been
dreaming.
on Big Black, but I bet you can think. I bet you can think I'm going to gut him while you're on the back of him, just because of how much time he spends in the air.
And another little deal on the practice deal. My dad was big on putting me on hard jump kickers that really jumped and kicked, and that's huge. Like direction change is nothing different than a jump kicker. If you can ride a heavy jump kicker, you can ride a spinner, and that's a big thing guys need to start getting on is hard jump kickers. It teaches you so much, and it's so beneficial for you. Sometimes kids just want to get nowadays you want to get the videos to put on Instagram of the spinners and what looks good, but honestly, a hard jump kicker that's going to tug on you a little bit, that's key too.
Yeah, and I think too, especially okay, I say especially now that I think so just because when I started, so a lot of lower level bulls, they don't hit as hard, so you can almost just hang out over the front end. That's the
Yep.
answer. Hang out over the front end. They're not hitting that hard and they're moving forwards, right? But these rank bulls and these bulls that are bucking hard, they hit so hard that the
Hmm.
kick is just as important as the front end.
Right.
Um, because you can get hung out over the front end if you're not ready to meet that kick. And on them
Yep.
hard, heavy jump kickers like that, you have to meet the kick good. I think that's
Yep.
one benefit, and I think that's probably a place I agree with you 100%. I remember going to Ray Cox in Jacksonville, Illinois, and he kind of taught me a lot. Uh, and he used to live with Jim Shoulders, traveling,
Hmm.
and he did Saddle Bronc, all of it. And he had a black bull there, and that sucker bucked. And it was like bushwhacker, where they hit that front end, and then their front end comes off the ground, and then their back end hits. And so they're
Yep.
hitting real hard and would never turn back at all.
Mhm.
They'd make like a circle and then go over to the out gate. And
Yep.
looking back at my career, I'm like, that bull right there is probably the perfect practice bull, just because you have to go to the front end, can't miss it, and
Yep.
you have to meet the kick. But the bull's going to go straight. It's just the fundamentals of
Yep.
that. So I
And
actually
that
agree with you on that.
and that's huge. Once you get the fundamentals down, the spin's easy. The spin is really easy. You just boop over your head or just a little. But once you get the front and back really down, that's game changer for a lot of people, and a lot of younger kids nowadays don't realize that. You got to get the front, getting to the front and throwing your chest. The spin's the easy part.
Yeah, yeah, and once you find that, I don't know but for me, like it, and I think a lot of guys hitting that spot where, you do enough drills, and once you find that spot where you're riding, you get tapped. Unless that bull, obviously like champion or chip round bulls and some really good long run bulls will switch up their timing and stuff throughout
Right.
it. But, you get that timing coming out, and it's just, 8 seconds comes pretty quick.
It makes riding a lot easier, that's for sure.
And
Definitely.
you only really can really get that feel from getting on practice bulls and from the drill. I think the buckrite and the drop barrel has been one of the biggest uh, benefits to bull
Changer.
riders. It's a game changer.
Definitely. That buckrite, it's huge. I love it. You wake up, go have some coffee, get on the buckrite. Go to lunch, come back, get on the buckrite. At night, get on the buckrite. You just drill, drill, drill. It's just like a basketball player. He's gonna shoot 103 pointers in game scenario situations. He's gonna just shoot, 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 shoot until he's locked in all over the court. Football player, he's gonna run a bunch of routes, catch the ball. Quarterback's gonna throw the ball a bunch of times. Bull riders need to get drills locked in and drills dedicated in their life. It's just a game changer.
It's to me, it's like a treadmill for bull riders. Like
Oh, definitely.
But go, guys go into the gym, getting on the treadmill. Buy you a Buckrite instead of getting on that treadmill. Get on the Buckrite for your 15-minute warm up. Then go work out, and then get on it.
Yep.
I started almost all my workouts that I do when my leg's not broke. is
Yeah.
is revolved around that Buckrite. Like I'm doing
Yep.
supersets. I'm doing like there's a WOD that I CrossFit WOD, the Murph. Where you run a mile, you do 300 squats, 200 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, run a mile, right? And so I taken that because I always loved that workout, and I just attached my Buckrite into that, and
Yep.
just doing all supersets, and stuff like that. Where, it's interesting because endurance is such a huge part of our sport, and it's like nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
Like, especially in bull riding, not just rodeos. Rodeos where you're getting on one stock, it's a little bit less if you're just getting on one head, but you get on, two head, there's a long run, short round, and then you get one re-ride. The other day I got on when I broke my leg, it was the fourth bull I got on that day,
Yeah.
between re-rides and stuff like that. So like the endurance part of it is such a big part of it. So like I think that's where the buckrite is just as beneficial than even the all the form and that comes along with it, because you're building endurance up where you need it.
Yeah. And the Buckrite, the guy who built it, he did an amazing job. It feels like a jump kicker. It feels really good, and it just lets you really just get the basics down and just keep drilling them into your mind that it's just the basics, just up, down, and getting it really formed in your mind to perfection almost, if you may, because there has not been a machine like that before times. It was the old, you had to go up and down helping your buddy, and you'd only do it for 5 6 minutes because you guys get tired of bucking it for you. And this
That was
thing just
endurance
lets
though
you
too.
drill.
That was
What's that?
endurance too. That was
Yeah,
endurance too.
that was definitely, but but a guy just would get tired of doing that, so it made it to where uh, you can really ride that thing for 2 3 5 minutes at one time, whatever you wanted to do, and really just get locked in on all the stuff you needed to work on, and just the endurance that way to where you're actually, I mean, having fun doing it as well.
I think too. So one thing that I really like, and I would actually encourage, first of all, the buckrite should be 80% of, as far as the barrels are concerned. Buckrite's like a good 80% of your barrel drills should be buckrite. Stationary barrel too. You should use a
Huge.
stationary
Oh
barrel
yeah,
a lot too.
100%.
But I think the balance between, so I would get a regular now we call them buckrights, drop barrel, a regular drop barrel, and put enough springs on there where you can get on it by yourself. Where
Yep.
the only way it goes is if you force the moves. You have to force them.
Yep.
And I think that's a good practice because on the back of bulls, there's times where you just have to force that
Or
movement.
yep.
And so that's where that, if you're supplementally using that and forcing it, I think it's a good practice. And that's what's cool is like, but the Buckright, you're not having to force that. It's about timing. So it's almost like two different ways. Like the timing's so important. So that should be the majority of what you get on, where you're not forcing moves. You're actually, your moves are within a timing, and you're used to a rhythm.
Yep.
And at the same time, utilizing stuff like a regular drop barrel to where you kind of have to force those moves.
Right. Fight for position in a
Yeah,
way.
fight for position. Yeah, and even maybe a mighty Bucky every once in a while supplementally as well, just because it's a different feeling. Like
Different. Yeah.
there's times it could be one jump within a ride, and it may not be very many bulls, but that one jump, you know, if you're in the championship round at a UTB and it's that one jump and you know what that feels like and you're prepared, then I think it benefits a guy to kind of
Yeah.
to use it as supplements. But yeah, I agree that the buck ride, it's just changed the entire game.
Yeah. I tell people, they go, well, it's kind of expensive. I say, you get a buck right, you spend 2 weeks on it, it pays itself off right away.
Yeah.
Spend the money to get better, and it pays itself off in a heartbeat.
I spent more when I bought my buck ride, I spent more money on my buck ride than I spent on a vehicle. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Oh, it is. It's the thing's amazing. I love it. It's just awesome. Awesome tool to have in your toolbox, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that it helps that development side without the just the danger of having to go and get on all the time. Whereas before,
100%.
like you had to get on a lot of practice bulls.
Especially when you're our age, the buck right's key. No.
Yeah. Well, I think it is key though in it for people that are when you get to that level where you're going all the time and you're dealing with little injuries here and there, like I think that it can be super beneficial.
Definitely.
Another thing, like so this past year, it was in February, I broke my foot. Um and so I was still, riding while I was kind of at that thing. Well, what I started doing is when I would get on that buck ride, I would actually start using that foot and like I knew that I at least throughout the week, sometimes as much as I could, I needed to learn how to embrace that pain from
Yeah.
re your foot. And so every single time I'd get on, I would kick it and I knew it was gonna hurt, but I'm like, if I'm gonna ride with my foot like this, which I'm going to, it wasn't like a bad, injury. It's just a
Yeah. Yeah.
broken, you're not gonna do anything about it. So you might as well get used to freaking, what that feels like. Freaking that week in Wichita, bull came around and I was in that spot where like you have to start opening up and I just started freaking doing it and I felt it in my heel. You can feel that
Yeah.
spurt
Yeah.
digging into your heel. And instead of backing off and being hesitant, I had trained myself during the
To
week,
take. Yep.
take it and
Definitely.
actually embrace it and go through it and finished him off, stepped off on my feet. Um, and, little things like that where you can't, that's much more difficult to do, um, you know, outside of having a barrel like that.
Definitely.
But yeah, man, you've been in when you started, you were talking about your rookie year was 2012. Is that right?
Well, see,
Or
I went to a handful then, but I guess I don't. It used to be when I was going as the very first event you made it to was your rookie year, and then they changed it to the first finals you made it to was your rookie year. If they would have changed that to 2013 being my rookie year, I would have won rookie of the year all day long.
uh,
Uh, but they did it when I first got on. It was the very first UTB you rode in. That was your rookie year.
interesting. So they now it's because I'm still not a rookie. Your top 30 in the world after the first cut. But I don't know what it is now because now that's changed with the shortened season. Because the was it year before or whatever, and I went to Arcadia. Well, that year in January I did really well, and so I was like 13th in the world, and then I broke my collarbone at Arcadia, and that took me, and it was like the cut was I don't know when that was, March or May, April maybe, I don't a few
Yeah.
months. I was like 33, and Jack was like, "Yeah, you're not a rookie." I'm like, "Dang it!" That was the one time because I came back, and so I know that that's changed then because the first, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what it is now.
I don't. Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
Season, and they don't really do cuts. I don't think. I mean, I don't
I
know.
don't
The
get it.
cuts are weird now because it's like 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, and then it's based on because we just went through this past year, like Dakota, and Casey when we were going up there, and it was weird, like uh because I was even higher at place. I was higher in the standings in Dakota, but I had no guaranteed events because I had taken second at a couple events, and since he had won
Just
one, he
one,
was
one.
guaranteed two
Yep.
events, whereas you used to just
Oh,
be guaranteed one. So with
correct.
short season, it's like guaranteed two, and then they don't even base it off of. It's like the last 4 weeks. So it's like how good you did in the last 4 weeks is how you get on. It's something weird like that. I didn't even
Yeah.
understand it, and I didn't want to because it was. I'm like, I'm gonna spend freaking 4 hours trying to figure the system out. I'm
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
go with it because it's gotten way too complicated. But then it got to the point where I was kind of having to a little bit because people don't realize the difference. Like one weekend, I planning on going to South Carolina, and then I get a call 3 days before saying, "Hey,
Right.
we want you in Sacramento." That's the other side of the country, bud.
That's
So
yeah. Exactly.
I spent so much money on that because I was not prepared. Um, so that weekend cost me like probably 2 grand, and
That's a huge deal too. Like you're already set to go to play or to wherever the case may be, and then they call you, give you 3 days. It's mentally draining. It's hard on a guy. You got to spend all that money, and then they expect you to go from A to B so fast. It's like it'd just be nice if there was a little more better heads up because when you're at that position too, it's so expensive. It's like, what do I do? But everybody's got the same goal. They want to make the world final, so everyone goes to that bigger event. It's just, I think it's just needs to be a little better system of letting these guys that are trying their butts off, spending all their money to get to the big show, just give them a better heads up, or just wait until the following weekend. Say, yeah, you made it this weekend, but we're gonna let you stay at where you already planned, and we're gonna guarantee you next weekend. That way, you have a little time to prepare with finances and just with
sure.
just everything. Like have a plan set together. That way, you're not just going there and wasting the money. Not wasting the money, but mentally, it's just hard on guys to transition from
And I
that
think
in such a short time.
it's harder now too because the new format where they're taking 65 guys and like you're out one day and outside of the seated, I don't know what it is, top 20, top 15.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not. Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but some guys are seated and some guys aren't. And I've been on both sides, and that's a weird thing too when you don't even really know. But like if you're going and you're guaranteed one bull, like that deal was I was guaranteed one bull in second.
Right. That's yeah, yeah, yeah.
It takes so much longer to get 65 guys in that event. And, they're dealing with people out of the country, they're dealing with injuries, and the staff is only so big. So, it's really three guys. I know it's Ruby, Jack. I'm sure there's, a couple more that are in there doing stuff, but like that's a lot of work for them.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they work there. They work hard. They do.
Yeah, no joke.
Definitely they got a tough job, that's for sure. Let's just say that.
It's one thing where I've like, no matter how frustrated I am, I'm like, do not ever take this out on Ruby and Jack.
Yep, yep.
They're freaking angels.
Yeah, they do so much, and they're awesome. They do a lot for us. And I'm sure they get quite a bit of calls where they get yelled at, but
Well, there's so many different like rule changes and stuff that happen, and it's just
right.
like trying to fly, like how many questions they field that aren't even entry related. It's
Right.
probably a bunch. Like, what are the rules here? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, what's going on?
Going on? Because I know last year they changed. So the World Finals, they changed the velocity standings from touring pros count. They didn't count to start. It was just velocities that counted towards the velocity finals and the
Yep.
velocity standings. And then they changed it to where touring pros count, and then they changed it back. And then at the very end of the year, the last 5 events, they changed it back to touring pros counts. And it was just like, that's crazy. that's crazy to me because you're having events in Fort Worth every Thursday that are touring pros. And
Yep.
you're talking about guys that are trying to make the world finals that do not live in Fort Worth or in Texas. Even guys on the East Coast, for me, it's still, 11, 12 hours to get to Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So, but if I know that going to those events is going to benefit me in making the world finals, I'm going to them. But
Yes.
if I don't think it's beneficial, then that's an extra day of travel. That's, if I have to be in Fort Worth and then I have to be in South Carolina, that's money and planes. That's,
Yep.
us scheduling, that was a, crazy ordeal for us. And then looking back at it, when they finally changed it back to Touring Pros Counts, I just like, man, I finished strong and got back up to seventh. And if I would have known that and I would have went to Touring Pros, then I would have had even more points and I would have really been able to push myself to get into the World Finals via that exemption.
Yep.
So that's an interesting thing, and I think it matters even more now that some of these kind of structures get consistent because of the shortened season.
Oh yeah, it has to. It has to be. I think it just needs to be from the beginning of the year. It has to stay the same. It can't keep switching like that. It makes it hard on planning for us, one, and especially on the Ruby and Jack when they got to try to explain to everybody that this change and that change. It makes their job just so complicating.
Yeah, I talk to Ruby probably way too much, doing all that. I'm like, can you explain this to me? Because and then I'm just at some point I'm like, all right, whatever happens now, it's gonna.
Right, and it just comes at the end of the day. What it really comes down to is stay on your bulls, and you're gonna
Yeah.
win money. You're gonna get on tour, and you just can't get worked up in all the stuff that changes and the things that go on behind the scenes. You just gotta just stay on bulls, and that's it.
Mason Lowe, I've reminded myself this every once in a while, but I remind myself of this every once in a while, but Mason telling me, he's like, doesn't matter how many long rounders you ride, it's how many short rounders you ride. He said, if you want to get where you're going, ride your short round bulls. You ride two bulls and you'll go everywhere you want to go. And I just always took that kind of to heart, like, in that process, like it's the short rounds where you go. And everybody that complains about, in the regular season, the team stuff is a whole different world that we're getting into
Yep,
during the regular season and what PBR has been. Um, it's up to you. And if you ride your bulls, you go where you want to go. And
100%.
you may get screwed. You may get screwed a lot. I got called for multiple slaps this past year, in a row that like just weren't there and I couldn't challenge them. And I've made that decision. I'm like, look, that happens, but I
Right.
have to push through and you get through it. And looking back, I'm like, that's not what cost me going to the world finals. What cost me going to the world finals is I didn't ride as many short rounders as I needed to,
Yep.
and
Yeah, I
that,
mean, at the end of the day, anything can change. Like new rules can come upon us, but you just stay on. You're going where you want to go. Simple. Stay on your bull, and that's
and
all it takes.
going back to those distractions. That's one of them. And like when you get to the
Definitely.
things and there's more on the line, and
Yep.
you want to get pulled into all of that instead of just what's in front of you, just one bull at a
Yep.
time. Uh, I
Yep.
think too, it's fascinating, but like when you look at sports and you look at guys that are going to retire, like guys that say this is when I'm done, and they put a timeline. Sean Willingham, good example. Albert Pujols, another example. Tom Brady, he just dominated his whole career. But
Right.
guys that get into that spot, Brett Favre, where they say I'm going to retire, and it's just like it frees them from all of those distractions, and they perform at a level that a lot of times they've either never performed at or it's been a long time since they've performed at that level. And that always
Right.
intrigued me, you know, that whole, why is that happening? It has to be they're freeing themselves from all of those distractions that.
Yeah, I think it you get caught up sometimes in all the stuff that might get thrown at you where you just let it go and you're just like, I'm just gonna enjoy the last little bit of my career and
Yeah.
just enjoy the moment that I still have in this sport that you don't get worked up or caught up in that anymore. You just go and ride, you go and enjoy the last few times you got, and it just makes it like you almost are starting out again, like you're first getting on tour. It's like this is like almost new again because you're just gonna let all of it go and just enjoy the last few times you got or the year you got, and it just
Well,
frees you from getting caught up in the drama, if you may.
do you get, because you've been there where you're top five in the world, and the PBR is really promoting you, and they're you're a face, and you see this happen throughout people's careers. Do you find that there's more pressure there? Because I think for some guys that seems to happen, and then performance starts to dip off. Maybe it's the autograph signings, maybe it's you need to be up at 6 o'clock this morning at the arena instead of kind of taking you out of the flow. What was that like, and what have you noticed in your career on that side?
I think again, it's just what if you get caught up into all that being more important than just the task at hand of just staying on and doing the basics. If you let all of that stuff get into your head and let it play into your head, that's not why we ride bulls. We ride bulls because we want to stay on, we want to be the best, and all the stuff that comes with it just comes with it, and you got to be able to handle it. But if you let it get into your head that you got to do this or that, or you're almost too good to do this and that, it just doesn't work. It's got to just be the stay on bulls. Don't get caught up into the
Yeah.
crap or the drama or whatever it may be, and just do the job. Do what you started as a kid to do. Stay on bulls, have fun, and enjoy it. But once you lose task of that's when it gets hard, and that's when you don't perform at the best of your level. When you get caught up in, oh, I got to sign, or it just that's what comes with the sport. Go and enjoy it, and if you don't want to do it, just don't do it, and just focus on riding bulls. And you do get everybody gets caught up in it, though.
Yeah.
It is just what happens.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it all the time and you're not used to it. There's one benefit. It's one benefit and something guys can learn from the Brazilians, especially when they first come over and the ones that don't know English. And a lot of times that's some of their best times in their career because they
Yeah.
can't get drawn into it. It is
Right.
immediate focus. They're not outside of their little culture that they're in, and that breeds, winning because it takes away distractions. It's almost a
Right.
hedge against distraction. That
Yep.
eventually goes away, once you actually start learning and stuff. But and I know, so I was talking to Andrew Alvidrez, and he was saying that like, and you would have been there, so I don't. He was saying that like the year Cooper won it, like Cooper, he didn't stay in the host hotel. He kind of stayed by himself because that was what he knew, and
Right.
really just in that spot, and he made that decision to not get out of that spot. When he got on tour and that, obviously
Worked. Yeah,
that
it's just what the
at
guy's
that
got to
point.
find what really works for you and stick
Yeah.
with it and not get drawn away from it. And that's where it can get hard. Sometimes some weekends you don't stick to what works for you. Just got to find what works, stick with it, and keep doing it.
Um, before I let you go, there's one more thing that I love. This is what I love about like going to those PBRs and going, and especially the UTVs. Um, and it's the competitors, the competitiveness within everybody. And I to the core, I'm a competitor, and whatever
Yep.
I'm doing, I do not like to lose. If we're playing ping pong, then I'm not gonna let you win. If we're playing golf, it doesn't matter if you're
Right.
shooting 99, I have to shoot 98.
Yep.
I don't care. At that point, I don't even care about how good I do as long as I'm beating you. And
Yep.
so, and at each stage, like there's guys, and it's almost like they can't handle being in that because it comes off sometimes as arrogant, but it's not. It's competitive.
No.
It's
Yep.
but what I love about going, especially with UTVs, is it not even the bulls. Every single person there, they to their very core want to win, and
Yep. 100%.
I that atmosphere is, I think, the best atmosphere in that you can possibly be in.
100%. It's you hang with winners, you're gonna be a winner, and everyone there is a winner, and it's just getting with the guys that help push you though too. It's being with guys that are gonna push you along the way, finding the guy that you get along with really well, that's gonna motivate you to do better, and that's who you kind of team up with and stay with through the weekend. That's someone that's just gonna help you out to be a better person, a better rider, just better overall in life.
And it's, you're going with people that are winning and riding, and you do not want to be the guy that's losing.
No,
There's nothing more motivating than going with guys that are consistently
100%.
riding well.
Yeah,
And
you wanna ride. You wanna, it's fun to go when you go to a bull riding and everyone does good and they're all happy because you can talk about, oh, we got first, second, and third. What a great weekend. But when you go and you're the one that bucks off, the other two stay on. It's like, oh, dang it. Pushes you to do good the next weekend, so you're not the one guy who bucked off.
we need to do it again. I'm gonna do it next year. We're gonna do it next year. But so it was a couple years back, and me, Keith, and Lucas Phipps. So my daughter has this cowgirl up buckle and is
Yeah,
pink and all of that. And I said at the end of each month, whoever has the least amount of PBR points has
that's
to wear
right.
that buckle for the entire month.
That's awesome. I like that. That's
I
good. That's a
remember
good one.
Keith would go in there, and I told the secretary so that she knew. And every time she would make Keith, she's like, Keith, I don't see it. And so he'd have to pull his shirt up and tuck it in. I was like,
Oh, that's funny.
stuff like that, I think it keeps everything light too, a little bit.
Right.
But
Yeah, you gotta. Hey, this is why we ride bulls. It's fun. We love doing it. When you take it serious, then it's not fun no more. You don't compete as well. You don't do as well. You're taking it as a serious job, and it makes it not fun. Well, when it's not fun, you don't perform as good as you should be. Yeah, it's serious and it's something that you've dedicated your life for. But at the end of the day, it's got to be fun. It's got to be enjoyable, and that's what makes you consistently do good every weekend when you're having fun. When you're going there and worrying about everything else, it's like some knob that turns in your head. You just don't ride as good. But when it's fun and you're enjoying every aspect of flying to the hotels to just everything that comes with it, it's like it's just a whole new mindset of just enjoying everything that is with the bull riding, and you're riding at the best of your game.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And then just how to stay in that zone, how to
Yep.
stay in that zone and make those adjustments. And but man, it's been awesome having you on. We'll do it again
Yeah.
in
Thanks,
person,
buddy.
but
Yeah.
my legs broke, so lately we're doing it here.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
heck
Well, thanks for having me on, Kyle. I appreciate it. It was fun.
what are your social tags for people to find you?
Instagram's just triplet90. Facebook's Matthew Caleb Triplet, and don't have Twitter or TikTok.
Yeah, I do. I don't use them.
Yeah, I don't.
TikTok, every once in a while I'll post a video of my rides or whatever, but it's like super not consistent at all. And then Twitter,
Yeah.
I didn't even know I had Twitter, but I guess I do because Vinny probably created it for me. And then
Hmm.
I don't think
I
I've
mean,
ever.
I had Twitter, but you know, I just, I don't know. I
I
lost touch
can
with it.
I can handle like two that I
Yeah.
can't all the which I say that that's my fault because I have a dashboard that allows me to make a post on every single platform with one post and I just don't use it. So
Yeah.
it's really my laziness, but I can be lazy in one area.
Well, I don't know. I think too much social media doesn't benefit a person either because you get drawn to your phone and it distracts you from really what you need to do in life, and that's get better at whatever you may do. And if you're looking at your phone 24/7, that ain't doing nothing but hurting you.
My my that's an interesting thing because my whole social media presence and stuff is like everything I do is kind of business related.
Right.
For my personal thing, it's for fans and also for sponsors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even
Definitely.
they get a little bitty, but like with the app and what we're doing with Western Edge is like I'm in the tech world now. Was it like
Yeah.
it or not? I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But I've made it a point in that transition to like there's certain times in the day, between 4 to 8, while I'm spending time with the family, it's like I've turned my phone on silent, I get away from it. Making sure even more now because now it's not so much just an enjoyment. Like I'm not gonna because when my daughter sees me on the phone, she doesn't know if I'm working, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I can let her know and I can teach her those things, but just being careful on that front. Like everything that she sees me do is, she doesn't know the full context of all of it, and then if it is me and her time, I better be spending time with her and not on my phone, like
Definitely. 'Cause you lose the human contact when, even you see a lot of people at dinner, they're just on the phone 24/7. The phone's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not bashing any of
Right,
it,
right.
but to have that connection with somebody, it's got to be looking in their eyes, talking to them, looking at them, not talking to them going like this. It's hard to have the connection and the feeling of, that you're entered in the conversation.
Yeah, man, even like this podcast, uh, that's one reason why I decided to do it the way I'm doing it because we're traveling so much. Actually have it in person is, and then supplementally when you have to, using technology like Zoom is awesome.
Oh,
But
100%.
that whole one-on-one thing, there's just something to it that you can't recreate through
No,
through that.
100%.
But all right, man, nice having you on here.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, heck yeah. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.